Happy holidays, and welcome back to Ask the Trade Pros, a show where a couple trade guys talk about trade stuff. We're here to answer your questions about your HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and other home systems, so you can keep your home running smoothly.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Todd.
With the start of the new year and the end of this holiday season, maybe you're looking around your home and realizing that you need some repairs, a little bit of maintenance, or you'd like to take some improvements to this home this year.
While we do our best to advise you on taking care of the things around your home, there are some projects that most homeowners probably shouldn't tackle. Sometimes there's safety reasons at play, or maybe it's just the need for specialized tools, knowledge, or licensing.
So today we're going to give our list of do-it-yourself don'ts. These are fixes or projects that you should absolutely call in a professional for. You might want the professional to save you time, money, stress, and most importantly, bodily injury.
So, Jordan, let's talk about some of these cases and what people can and can't do.
Hey, I got YouTube. I can do anything.
Yeah, well, I'm a YouTube university master. Not one thing that I can't tackle. So if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we have many stories to tell, but one that comes to my mind quickly, and probably because it happened a few days ago, is we had a service call where a homeowner was trying to work on their electrical themselves. So they had a bad outlet wasn't working. They went and removed the outlet to replace it, and they were wearing a necklace. So they leaned over, and the necklace shorted itself out on the outlet. So could you imagine that? Nice shock to your neck.
Yeah, that's what they call a neck burn.
Yeah, neck burn is right. So needless to say, shorted out the outlet, burned the outlet, tripped the breaker, obviously, and we get that phone call. I can see why the customer decided that electrical wasn't the work for them.
We do get a lot of people that are afraid of electrical. For some reason, they worry that it's going to kill them or burn their house down. I see a lot of plumbing ones. People that try to do, they just want to cut some drywall. They think they can patch a hole in the wall, do some remodeling, and next things we know, we're getting a call because they stuck a nail or a screw through a pipe and their house is flooding.
Yeah, we get that call quite often. I was actually at a call recently where a homeowner was putting up shelving in his garage and decided to put a screw in the wall for the bracket and heard a noise behind the wall. He thought it was his water, so he went and shut his water off, but it turned out to be that he put a screw right through the refrigerant line for his HVAC unit.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Well, pretty cool for us. We went out there and did a repair and got some work out of it. Come on, Jordan. I know you got some good ones.
One of the problems we have with customers doing their own repairs is using tools and equipment. Now, a good trade professional will come out and they'll have very expensive tools and you'll see them do something that looks very straightforward and very easy to do, but a lot of that's years of practice. A good example of this is drain snakes. I remember customers a few years back, they rented a drain snake from a rental shop to try to clear their own drain pipe. But what they don't realize is the snake is a powerful drilling tool. So when you put it down that pipe, if you don't know how to use it properly, you'll clear the hole in your drain, but you could also put a new hole in your piping. If you run the snake improperly, you'll run it straight through the plastic piping that makes up most modern drains. So we've run into lots of customers where they went and tried to do that themselves, and instead of us just going and snaking a drain, now we're going and replacing pieces of pipe because they drilled holes through them.
Yeah, well, that's just two paths out, right? You have your main drain, and if that backs up, you have a secondary drain, which will be under your house. How about customers? I guess another big one on the plumbing side of things is customers.
They're all on the plumbing side, aren't they?
Yeah, customers don't want to spend the money to pay a professional to replace their water heater, so they think, oh, well, this could be easy. It's just a hot and a cold line. I can do this myself. Turns out they're not so good at plumbing and it's leaking, or the most common one is they'll try to bend the copper supply line and it will have a pinhole leak spraying all over the wall. call.
We get that a lot with under sink repairs too. I see a lot of times they'll try to replace a RO system or a line to the refrigerator or the dishwasher, and then they don't connect it right, and it breaks or snaps or it's got kinked, and then it sprays water everywhere. The problem with most of these repairs is YouTube, right? So everyone goes on YouTube, watches it, says, "Oh, this looks pretty straightforward. I think I got this." What you don't see when you have a trade professional out there is the years or decades of experience it took them through making the same mistakes you're about to, not to make those mistakes.
Yeah, or the people who listen to our podcast and
We would never lead anyone wrong.
and decide that hey, I listen to this podcast. I can go to my sink and replace my angle stops.
Well, you can with our advice. Our advice is very wise and sage.
Well, turned out that they ended up calling us because we were their local trade pro. And she asked me, I thought I could do it after you describing how, but apparently I was wrong. Luckily, she shut the water off to her house and there was no damage done. I was happy to help her out.
One of the newest things that we see customers doing that they probably should leave to a professional is the smart home accessories. Mostly what I'm talking about is smart switches, smart plugs, things of that nature. You pull a traditional plug out of the wall and it's relatively straightforward how it goes back in. You take the old wires off, they match up to the new plug, and you put it back. A lot of these smart switches, smart plugs that come out, they have additional wires, they have additional circuits because of the way they work. So they'll run grounds or neutrals or secondary power sources and other things off of them. And the customers don't know this. So they pull the old plug off, they put the new plug on, and it just doesn't work. They wired it in wrong. Oftentimes they'll blow the plug. They'll ruin the smart plug because they'll wire it incorrectly, or they'll just plug it in and it doesn't work at all.
And it's never their fault.
No, because the instructions were perfectly clear. This is not a Kia. Those things come with amazingly detailed instructions that say, put this one wire to this one spot.
Yeah, and that's very true because I could tell you that when I personally have shown up to a house, customers don't like it when you ask them, okay, well, why isn't your electrical working? And they say, oh, I don't know, it suddenly happened. My first question is, well, have you touched anything lately? And they say, well, yeah, I put this smart switch in, but that's not the problem. And I've actually had customers, and it's funny, but it's true, get mad at me because I instantly go to the first thing they touched, and I could tell you that 99% of the problem is them working on it. One customer in particular actually got mad and didn't want to pay the service call because I opened up the switches that he replaced by his front door, and he insisted that it was working. And what I did, even though I fixed the problem and his lights were working, and in fact they weren't when I got there, he just couldn't fathom the fact that he did something wrong and thought that I touched something else in the house to make it work.
Well, we get this a lot, especially with a lot of the new smart direct-to-consumer products. We see this in smart switches. We see this in smart plugs. See it in smart thermostats or smart devices that people have put in the house. Their instructions tell them, oh, this is straightforward and anyone can put this in. And we get probably half of our calls about customer-installed products that don't work properly would be related to these smart products that are marketed to consumers that they can put in themselves.
Yeah, if it says it takes 10 minutes to install, that means 10 hours, right?
It's just like when I worked on a car. I can get through the repair. I once worked on my car and I changed the transmission oil, and I was all proud of the work, and I was talking to a mechanic about it, and he was like, oh yeah, you did a good job. He's like, what did that take you, 20 minutes? And I was like, no, 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and they could have done it in 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the same with professionals. So one of the things you have to think about, even if you could do the work yourself, is it worth the time and effort that you're going to spend doing it yourself? Versus the professional comes out, it's like, oh yeah, I got that done in 20 minutes.
So Jordan, we've talked a little bit about plumbing stories, electrical stories. What we really haven't touched on is any HVAC stories. You got any good stories for us?
Oh, we have quite a few HVAC stories. Normally, customers don't try to touch their main systems. We've seen that sometimes. I know you have a story or two on that. We see a lot of customers who go on Amazon and see cheap mini splits and think they can self-install the cheap mini split. Now, our HVAC technicians have gone through dozens and sometimes hundreds of hours of training, even on mini splits. There's special tricks and techniques to installing them, things that make them more reliable, less problem-prone, not likely to leak. And they don't tell you any of that in the install instructions, but they do try to sell you this all-in-one kit that you can do yourself. And we've seen a lot of them where the line sets are just sticking out in random places. They're leaking in every place. The wiring's done backwards.
The condensation lines ran in the wall instead of outside to the house.
Yeah, I've seen some horrible things. I've seen it where they've just put the system in completely wrong. The heads are crooked, the condenser's bad. Like none of that proper placement technique or little tricks that we use are included in the install instructions. So sure, the system's cheap on Amazon and sure you'll put it in, but it's likely to fail weeks, months, right away.
So the best HVAC story I can think of off the top of my head is a customer who we had given an estimate to for a complete new system, didn't hear anything back. And I think about a year's time had passed and she gives us a call and says that her air conditioning is not running. And she was quite frantic and worried. So technician goes out there and come to find out it's a new system that was installed that wasn't working. So technician discusses with the customer and come to find out that the customer at the time, for whatever reason, couldn't afford to purchase the system through us being professionals. And so she decided that her son watched some YouTube videos and her son said that he could handle the installation. So he attempted to, and he ended up running type L waterline copper from the coil out to the condenser, used water solder instead of brazing, and released the refrigerant and ran it for a few days. I don't know how long it ran, but obviously everything leaked out and it failed the compressor. So she calls frantic, upset. We go out there and tell her, well, your compressor failed, and where did you buy this no-name system from? She didn't know where her son bought it. Her son was out of town. So finally she gets in contact with her son, contacts the company. So here we are in the middle of the summer and 2 weeks go by. She has no cooling, and finally the company gets back with her, sends her a compressor out. We give her a price to install a compressor, and she was very disappointed in the price. And we explained to her, well, this is why you always hire professionals to do the installation from the beginning, and these problems won't occur. There's, as Jordan mentioned, certain practices and training, and most importantly, equipment and processes needed during that installation to ensure it's done correctly and no leaks. And ultimately, you have a running system.
Yeah. So what I'm gathering here, Todd, is when we're asking the customer what not to handle, know your limits. The biggest problem we have is with YouTube and obviously with prices. Everyone who doesn't want a good deal, but you get into something more than you can handle, but you don't know it's more than you can handle before you start. We've talked about it in other episodes about how to find a trusted trade pro. And when you find a trusted trade pro, trust them. What they tell you is correct. They're not trying to give you items that you don't need. They're not overcharging for the quality that they do. So, there's some simple things you might want to do to save your money, but the way it was explained to me when I was young was, do you want cheap or do you want inexpensive? And sometimes being cheap is more expensive.
Of course. So if you're ever unsure of a home repair and need a hand, reach out to your local trade pro and ask for advice or help.
Of course. And remember that you can listen to this podcast and we will most likely lead you in the right way, but sometimes not the right way. But you'll get an idea of how easy and how hard things are. Once again, thanks for listening to us. If you like this episode, then don't forget to subscribe. We release new episodes every other Tuesday.
If you have a question about your home, we can help. Leave us a voicemail, send us an email, and we may feature your question in a future episode. Our contact information is in the show notes.
And once again, a huge thank you out to Done Right Services for sponsoring this podcast and supporting our show. Happy holidays and Happy New Year to everyone.